Hello, Force of Will fans. It's me, Jay Ruler, on Kaifu's channel. Kaifu has been very kind in inviting me to share with you the 5 things that I think Force of Will should do. Before we get started again, I want to thank Kaifu for giving me this opportunity to speak to all of you today about this subject. And if you would like to see Kaifu's version of this video, the 5 things that he thinks Force of Will should do, or the 5 things that he would like to see in the game of Force of Will, please go to my channel to see his video. And my channel's URL will be in the description of this video. So we will go ahead and get started shortly. Again, thank all of you for watching, and thank Kaifu for allowing me this really awesome opportunity. So let's go ahead and dive into the 5 things I think Force of Will should do. I'll just tell you up front, they're very controversial. Some of them are controversial. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me. I kind of thrive on controversy. If you look at the other videos on my channel, I tend to talk about things about the way the game has handled itself and about the finances and things of the game, the distribution side of the game, as well as the game mechanics themselves. So this will span quite a range, and if you agree or disagree with me, please let me know in the comments. The first thing I think Force of Will should do is revise the rarity system. Now, this is a huge topic and something that I've talked about quite a bit, and something I will continue to talk about until, fingers crossed, the day that Force of Will actually listens to us that think this way. And does themselves and all of us a favor, is revise the rarity system. Now that, again, is a topic for a whole nother video. It's a series of videos that I'm doing. But to make a long story short, the rares and super rares need to be rare and super rare. Currently, you have the opportunity, God packs notwithstanding, and there aren't enough of them to really make a difference, but in a standard pack, you get either one rare or super rare card guaranteed, and then you have a chance to get another one. The last card in every pack is a foil card that's either a foil magic stone, foil common or whatever. And then you also get a chance to either get a foil rare or super rare. So if you end up opening, I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, I have it recorded elsewhere. If you open 36 booster packs in a booster box, you're going to end up with, 40, 45 rares and super rares, which makes the secondary market for those cards weaker, which makes the expected value of a box lower, which means that retailers don't want to carry or push the product as much, which means that we, the players, end up getting less bang for our buck at the end of the day, especially with stuff that we want to trade off, because not everyone wants to play everything. So I think revising the rarity system to make the rares more simplified and actually rare would be a good thing. So my vision, the short version of my vision, is to have either one rare or super rare per pack, and God packs are fine. Like I said, they're so rare that it doesn't influence the overall distribution of the rares and super rares. But in a standard pack, you get one rare or super rare per pack, and those rares or super rares either come in vanilla or full art / foil. So the full arts are also the foils. So there's just those 2 levels of rares. You can have, the uber rares. Again, they're not prevalent enough to change the value or distribution of the cards, but just one rare or super rare, and I think maybe super rares could be one in every 4 packs. So if you open 4 packs, on average, you will get 3 rares and 1 super rare, and then maybe one of those, 1 in 4 rares / super rares will be full art. So then that means that 1 out of every 4 rares will be full art, and 1 out of, every 16 super rares will be full art. So you can see how the distribution of those gets more difficult, and that means that the price, for those singles starts to escalate, which means that the booster boxes are worth more money over time, which means that there's a profit to be made, which means that retailers will actually crack open boxes and sell singles. Singles market will thrive. Players will make their money as well if they want to, or be able to trade the things they don't want for the things that they want. And I think at the end of the day, we're all happy, and Force of Will makes their money as well. So moving on to number 2, we have introducing new keyword skills. Let me get my face out of there for a second. Force of Will has done a pretty good job of this so far, I must say. Keyword skills are things like swiftness, first strike, flying, even things like remnant and those sorts of things. There are a number of mechanics in the game that I think should be codified into being keyword skills. So to use Magic the Gathering as an example, and you'll have to forgive me, I do apologize every time I do this, we must admit that Force of Will is Magic the Gathering's smaller Japanese brother. So it does borrow a lot of elements from it, but I think they need to go a little further in codifying a number of mechanics. I think that makes it a lot simpler, so you have more room for other card text, and also it's more thematic. So, for example, in Magic the Gathering, you have something called lifelink, which means that if a creature does damage to a player or another creature, the controller gains that much life. There are cards in Force of Will that do that already. So I think that should become a keyword skill. That mechanic should become a keyword skill. And then a certain breed of J/Resonator has that, like vampires. So you realize, like, okay, vampires have lifelink. That makes sense. Another one that comes to mind is Death Touch. And Death Touch would be in Force of Will if a J/Resonator deals damage to another J/Resonator, destroy that target, destroy the damaged object. So I think it wouldn't be called Death Touch probably because Force of Will had to make it its own. But I think a mechanic like that, there's just examples of things that I think they already exist. Creature of Chaos has something like that. 1-Inch Boy has that. Shadow Assassin has that. So those cards should be codified and given a keyword skill. Now there's a couple of things that Force of Will has not quite touched on yet, and those are keyword skills that actually change the physical use of cards, and I tend to like those a lot. So Remnant is a good ability that touches on this point, which Remnant actually changes the way the physical card is manipulated, because normally you can only play a card from your hand. Okay, so that's actually the physical transference of a card from one place to another in the game. Remnant does that by allowing you to play it from your graveyard and move it to another zone, which is your remove from game zone. So I think more stuff like that, given keyword skills, would be really interesting. Again, to borrow from Magic the Gathering, they have one that comes to mind. It's called Threshold. If you have 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you're considered to have Threshold. Now, that doesn't do anything for you unless a card effect specifically refers to that. So, you could have a Force of Will card, we're just going to call it Threshold for now, that says Threshold dash, this card has a certain effect. So, let's say they're in Force of Will, they release a fire card. It costs 1 fire, deal 500 damage to target Resonator. Threshold dash deal an extra 200 instead. So if you do have Threshold, if you do qualify for that, it does an extra 200 damage. And that opens up a whole new realm of possibilities, decks that try to reach that threshold as soon as possible and take advantage of the cards that get there. One that I kind of made up recently is called Enraged. So Enraged is if your main deck has 20 or fewer cards in it, you're considered to qualify for Enraged or be Enraged. So you could just imagine like a Resonator that costs like 2 will and it's a 600/600 doesn't have any other effects until it becomes Enraged. So it would say like Enraged, which would be a keyword skill, dash this Resonator gains 400, 400, and swiftness. So conceptually the way that would work, the way I'm thinking of it is as the game progresses and maybe you're not making a lot of headway against your opponent, maybe you're losing, your deck's already half gone. You as the player casting your spells, or perhaps these Resonators, these allies of yours, become Enraged, so they get this bonus. So it's also a really good catch-up mechanic. So things like that manipulate the physical status of cards or the way that cards are actually played, the physical objects themselves, I think are really interesting, and that's a whole new realm of opportunity that Force of Will has not yet tapped into, and I really would like to see them do that. Moving on to number 3, I think that Force of Will should settle on a unified art style. Now, I was attracted to the game, like a lot of people were, in part because I did like the art style. I'm not the biggest anime fan in the entire world. I'll just go ahead and be honest and say I'm hardly an anime fan. There are a number of them that I like, but I do like the anime art style. I do think it's fun. Sometimes it can be irreverent. You can kind of do something that a more realistic style would not be able to present as well. It would just be off-putting. So I do like that a lot. However, a lot of the artwork in this game does clash, and I will show you a few examples. If you were to look at these 2 card images right here, without any of the text or the overlays or anything like that, just look at the original digital illustrations as the artist made them. Would you guess that these 2 things are from the same universe, from the same game? I mean, Bedivere on the left there, for example, is like this epic fantasy, Magic the Gathering, Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones type Western style. And then on the right side, you have like a super anime, scene here. And it's like both of them are good. Both of them are great pieces of artwork. I like both of them a lot for different reasons. And I wish Force of Will would either go one way or the other with their art style. Now, of course, you can't have everything done by the same artist, but if you had a direction, like the way a newspaper has an editorial direction, you kind of go in a certain, political leaning, economic leaning, etc. But in this, it would be a certain art leaning. So we're either going to go hyper realistic, like Bedivere epic fantasy style, or we're going to go really anime, like High Speed Dash there. Or what I think they should do is somewhere in the middle, and I'll give you an example here. Soul Dark Commander of Steam. With cards like this, there are a number of them. I just chose this as an example. With cards like this, you get the anime roots of Force of Will, so it does have that kind of bold outline around, every object in the picture. You just look at like Soul's skin, for example, or the outline of his shape. You have that bold, dark, inked outline like you would get in a cartoon, like an anime, but it also has really realistic elements in terms of shading and in the way that the overall look and feel and presentation of the card is. So I think doing that kind of midway would be the right way to do it. It is jarring. This isn't a super huge point, sorry, but it's something that is off-putting, and I've heard more than one person say that they don't really care for either the Clash or the anime side of things. Like, they like the game, but like some of the really, really over-the-top anime cards, like High Speed Dash, they just don't seem like they fit. And I don't know what impact that would have on terms of player base or money made for Force of Will or what have you, its popularity. But I do think, at the very least, it would be more satisfying, a more satisfying experience to kind of settle on a direction. Again, that's not saying everything can or would or should look exactly the same. You definitely don't want that. That gets bland. You want the artist to express their individual styles. But I think going kind of like nudging people into a middle route, or only bringing on artists that have a style that's kind of in the middle between anime and realistic, would satisfy everyone, and I think that would do a lot to make the game more appealing, more visual, bring more visual continuity, and just make it more appealing overall. So moving on to number 4, we have finding a suitable replacement for Regalia. Now, Regalia was a really good idea, but it was very poorly executed. So the idea is that you have certain void cost or colorless cost cards that anyone can have access to. So if you're running like an aggro deck, you probably don't have a lot of room for counters to different things. That's kind of what control does. So you can have, side deck or main deck colorless, control elements that you're able to bring in. Maybe they're not the best, but they do help cover you. They help cover your weaknesses. On the other side, if you're playing control, you probably don't have a lot of room for super aggressive cards, or your attributes, I should say, will not cover or allow for a lot of aggressive cards, but maybe that there are some colorless cards that you can bring in to help complement your strategy or to help cover your weaknesses. So that's why Regalia was a good idea. It's just like artifacts in Magic the Gathering. It gives people access to certain abilities no matter what kind of deck you're playing, so that's the good part of it. The problem was they totally botched the job by making Regalia super busted. Like, they're just, a lot of them, like Levitine, the Demon Sword, is the worst offender. Has so many abilities, they're all super good, and it costs 0. Plus, you can discard other copies of it from your hand to produce will, to ramp up in a pinch. And it's just, it does too much for too little. It's not balanced. So I've heard talk from Jordan on the official Force of Will Q&A videos that they're not going to reprint any Regalias. They're not going to bring the Regalia mechanic back. For one, it's supposed to be unique to the Ataraxia realm, which happened in the Alice cluster. And also, I think they realized their mistake. I think they should bring something back like it, cards that are void, both, things like additions and maybe another card type that's called something other than Regalia, and of course Resonators, for the reasons that I enumerated. However, when they do that, they really need to look at balancing the costs. And another consideration they need to put in mind with that is you got to realize, like, even though things cost the same total will, they're not all as easy to pay for. So for example, let's look at a number of cards that cost like 2 will. If you have something that costs 1 darkness and 1 fire, that's harder to pay for than something that's either 2 fire or 2 darkness, because you have to shift your stone base into a way that's able to pay for both of them. It's not as consistent. That's also more difficult to pay something that's either 2 fire or 2 darkness is harder to pay for than something that's 1 fire and 1 colorless, and 1 darkness and 1 colorless. Those are easier to pay for, and easiest of all would be something that's 2 colorless, because anyone can use it. So they need to balance cost and effect, keeping in mind that things that are totally void, totally colorless, are the easiest of all to pay for, even if they do have a cost. So I would like to see the concept of Regalia come back, however, with an execution that's more along the lines of what I'm mentioning here. And lastly, I would like to see more support for the Wanderer format. I'm a big fan of the Wanderer format. I got into the game kind of in the middle of the Alice cluster, and at that time I was buying singles of Grim cards, so I do have a lot of those as well to play during the New Frontiers format then. And the Wanderer format is important for a number of reasons. For one, I don't think the players should feel screwed when they spend their hard-earned money buying cards that are going to become obsolete once the format changes. You know, once Alice Cluster drops off, and those of us who have spent hundreds of dollars buying cards for that, once that goes away, we don't want to be stuck playing it in a dead format. We want a vibrant format that makes us feel like the money we're spending is going to be good for use for years to come. And second of all, I think that would go even further into promoting card prices, which is a big thing that I'm always rambling on about. So the way they could do that is that they could introduce a professional sort of circuit for that. So, you know, now they have Force of Wills, like in the United States, Force of Will States, Nationals, and then you go on to the World Championship. What if they had an analog for the Wanderer format? So they have the New Frontiers World Championship circuit. Why not do a Wanderer one too? So there's 2 world champs that play in 2 different formats. I don't think they would go that far, but even just doing a States or a Nationals in the US and then the equivalent in other countries, I think they might do, you know, different regional or provincial events, things of that sort. And with that would come better prizes, exclusive playmats, you know, exclusive promo cards. And another idea I had, this would really make Wanderer interesting, and I think a lot of people, I bounced this off a number of different people, and they said this would be awesome. You know how they release Vingolfs, you know, every year? What if they did a really tiny sort of Vingolf? Call it something else. Maybe it was 20 cards once a year or once a quarter or whatever. And those cards go straight to Wanderer. It's like straight to DVD. It doesn't even hit the theaters. It goes straight to Wanderer. You get a pack of 20 cards, 2 copies of 10 cards each. Maybe it sells for like 10, 15 bucks. And they don't go to New Frontiers at all. They're brand new Wanderer usable only cards. And I think that would go a huge way into spicing things up, because that's the only format that you would be able to use those cards the moment that they're released. So I think a couple of those changes, more support for Wanderer at the end of the day, would go a long way of making us happy longer term, and also supporting the card prices long term as well. So I will go ahead and wrap this video up by thanking everyone for watching. I do appreciate every single view that this video gets. It helps out Kaifu, especially. It helps me out. It helps the community out to get these ideas. And on that note, if you do have a question for me about something I've said, or you have a bone to pick with me, you disagree with me, or maybe you do agree with some of the things I say, I know I can be a little controversial, please let me know in the comment section of this video. Again, if you want to see Kaifu's version of this video, please head over to my channel. The URL will be in the description of this video, and see Kaifu's video on the 5 things that he thinks Force of Will should change. So there are any number of things that a game should change, and I don't think that, you know, Force of Will should just listen to everyone and just do all of it, because if you try to please everyone, you won't please anyone. But it's this kind of discussion that leads to positive developments, or at the very least us venting our frustrations, or just, you know, daydreaming, thinking what if, how fun that would be. Don't forget to rate and share this video if you liked it. I'll talk to you guys next time.